In today's episode of Today in World War II, April 15th, the British land in Norway. Yugoslavia surrenders the last free city against the German onslaught. King George awards Malta the George Cross. The Gustav Line in Italy starts to crumble. Colditz is the Colditz Castle, the POW camp, famous one, is liberated by the Americans. And Montgomery decides, well, if I'll captured German troops, if you're old and if you're young, you're discharged. Just go. Make your own way home. Let's get started. Okay, so on today's date, the British land in Norway. The 146th Infantry Brigade lands at Namsos and starts to advance towards Trondheim. And further north, British troops land at Lofoten Islands, and the Battle of Hegra Fortress begins. And I'll let you know how that goes as we move forward in this chronicle. But needless to say, don't get your hopes up, okay? Don't think it's going to be successful. Anyway, I keep saying March, April 15th, 1940. Yugoslavia's Second Army surrendered Sarajevo to the Germans, and this was the last major city in Yugoslavia that was holding out. This was full occupation now. The Germans and their allies had conquered Yugoslavia in just in a matter of days. Of course they would. Yugoslavia could not stand up to the full might of the Wehrmacht at that time. But you know, there's something to be said about being careful what you wish for, because the occupying the country, that's the easy part. Dealing with the partisans is going to be a big deal. And as I've mentioned before, there's this guy named Tito, and I think he's going to cause a lot of trouble to the Germans and the Italians and the other simpering, bootlicking allies that they brought into this. I'm talking to you, Romania and Bulgaria. Okay. And on April 15th, 1942, King George of the United Kingdom, he awarded Malta the George Cross for heroism and devotion. And I think that was a very good thing because they certainly deserved it, because it was a symbolic gesture, obviously, awarding an entire island the medal, George Cross, because old King George couldn't exactly give them anything else like food or ammunition or whatever. And look, I understand, okay? I'm not making fun. All I do is talk about Malta, Malta, Malta. I'm like Marsha. I'm like Jan and the Brady Bunch. Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. Malta, 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 because it was that important. Okay? And I don't think it gets enough credit in American press or in American circles. They don't recognize how key that Malta was. Having said that, I know the Maltese citizens at this point in time couldn't have given a flying what about getting the George Cross. There was some graffiti that I'd seen in old photographs. They said we can't eat medals. That was kind of the overlying. That was the most common opinion by most Maltese at this time when it came to the Malta, to Malta getting the George Cross. On April 15th, 1944, the German defensive line, the Gustav Line, in Italy finally started to crumble. And this was the bane of General Mark Clark's existence because, boy, he wanted to get to Rome quickly and he wanted just to be, the spotlight on him and walking into or driving into Rome, all the grandeur, all the history and so forth as the conquering liberator of Rome from the Germans and blah, blah, blah. And there was a couple of things getting in his way. Well, first of all, you had General Kesselring, Field Marshal Kesselring, I should say, and the Gustav Line, and actually three things: the geography of Italy. Pretty hard to make progress when you have a very narrow country, coastline on either side, and you got mountains in the middle. That was tough, and so they were able to push through. It took about 3 months. tons of casualties, sacrificing a historical and architectural jewel, the monastery of Monte Cassino, but it's starting to fall. So all things will fall eventually if you have enough munitions and men and planes to throw at it. And again, allied allied attrition, allied logistics won the day in so many battles in World War II. In Colditz, my favorite POW camp in World War II, Colditz Castle in Saxony in the southwest of Germany. The head of the camp commandant had received orders to march the prisoners out to evacuate them from the Americans who were about to liberate the castle. The prisoners absolutely refused. They said, "Nope, we're not going anywhere." Now these were SS, so the SS probably could have shot them if they wanted to, but at this point in time, I think they knew that, there's not anything to fight for anymore, right? So they split. They bailed. And so the Ninth Armored Division, the American Ninth Armored Division, uh, um, reached Colditz and liberated. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. And finally, on April 15, 1945, Field Marshal Model, the commander-in-chief of German Army Group B, ordered all young soldiers and old soldiers to be discharged from his army. And that was something because Model was a Nazi. And for him to have mercy on those troops, the old people, the old soldiers and the really young ones. I remember they were bringing in like 13, 14-year-olds this time. That was good, and he gave them the notification they weren't deserters. So they could show if some fanatic caught them and wanted to hang them up on from a telephone pole. And as civilians, they were told make your own way home. So surprising act of humanity from, like I said, a field marshal who was known as a fanatical Nazi. Well, I'm not a fanatical anything. I'm going to let you go now. So I will see you tomorrow in my next video.